1, 2.
We are back with another exciting edition of the College Tailgaters. My name is Chris America, coming to you from Orlando, Florida. And my man, he is in Moline, Illinois today on work assignment. That is the home of the John Deere landscape. My man, Mr. Sean Daly. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good, Chris. Like you said, here in Moline, headquarters of John Deere. And unlike a lot of these SEC football teams, I'll play some out-of-conference road games here. So we're taking the show on the road from Moline. And I don't know whether I need to apologize or have the guy in room 803 here thank me. This hotel has some pretty thin walls, so he's about to get some college basketball, some college football knowledge dropped on him, whether he wants it or not.
It's definitely he should thank you because he gets to listen to the show before anybody else. It's like he's a VIP. And once again, I cannot stress enough that you are in the hometown of John Deere landscape. I do have some stock in John Deere that I got from my daddy. He worked there for a long time. So they don't sponsor the show, but I have a lot of stock in there. So please make sure you go out and buy lots of John Deere equipment.
You know, I like it. I got me a nice John Deere trucker hat, I think, back home. So that's all the John Deere equipment I own, but I do my part.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate you helping me out in my stock and bonds that I have with them. Big weekend again. I feel like every weekend it's a bloodbath Saturday, and yesterday did not disappoint us. Good news for you. I know you're a big-time Duke hater, and Duke dropped the ball once again.
Yes, they did. They lost to St. John's. That was at Madison Square Garden. Another horrible game for Grayson Allen, which seems to be the story with every time they lose, he has a terrible game. St. John's is a bad team. They're winless in the Big East. They're last place, and they go on. They take out Duke in a home game at Madison Square Garden. So always happy to see that. I think we can officially say Duke is frauds. If you're losing games at a half-empty Madison Square Garden to St. John's in February, like, are you really going to make any noise in March?
Yeah, you're not. And I'm sitting here looking at Duke at number 4, and I feel like, again, we're talking about Duke losing every week, and you ask, why is Duke number 4? Well, the reason why Duke is number 4 is because everybody else keeps losing with them. So it's hard to move them out of their ranking spot when Kansas, who also lost 84-79 against Oklahoma State. We talked about how Oklahoma State lost last weekend. They bounced back and they beat conference foe Kansas.
Yeah, Oklahoma State's not a great team. They did beat Oklahoma early in the year. Stormed the court for that. But yeah, going into Allen Fieldhouse to beat Kansas. This is Kansas's third home loss this year, which is the most they've had since the 98-99 season. And they still got a few more home games that are going to be tough. So Kansas, to me, they really, really struggle to rebound the ball. They've only, I think, led in rebounding in one Big 12 game this year. So they got dominated on the boards against Oklahoma State, and, you know, it showed up in the final score.
Yeah, Cameron McGriff almost had a double-double yesterday for Oklahoma State. He had 20 points, 9 rebounds. He had a lot of help, too, on the boards from Mitchell Solomon. He also had brought in 7 rebounds, where you look at Kansas, and nobody had any rebounds over 5. The leading scorer for them was Udako Azubuike. Did I say that right? Gesundheit. Yeah. 20 points, 5 rebounds, and a 21-minute effort. Yeah, not a good showing for Kansas, but they made it close. It was 84-79. They're now 18-5 on the season. And again, why is Kansas number 7 when they lose to teams like Oklahoma State? Because teams ahead of them keep losing. Oklahoma, we talked about them. They also dropped the ball. They're the 12th ranked team. They lost 79-74. Is it called the Red River rivalry still within basketball, or is that just a hey, we're going to meet in Austin or Dallas, Texas to play each other type deal?
Yeah, this one, I don't know what kind of deal they had with that, but they had game day there. Oklahoma on national TV yet again, and they're always fun on national TV. Trae Young already seems to be a primetime player. Texas defense really frustrated Trae Young, and he still put up 19 points and 14 assists. So if that seems like it's like the floor with him. That's the worst he's going to do this year. But every time Oklahoma gets on national TV, they lose. We were talking before the show. They seem a lot to me like the Cavs. You know, they win a bunch of games, and then you put them on national TV, and they get blown out all the time. But yeah, I mean, you can't knock them out of that 12 spot because everyone ahead of them lost too. So to me, there's only a handful of teams this year that are like really, really, truly top level elite. Maybe 3 or 4 of those teams.
Well, we'll get into the ones that didn't lose here in a second, but I did want to go back and talk about Trae Young. You mentioned the 14 assists, 19 points. It feels like Oklahoma is starting to treat him like the Cavaliers treat LeBron James. He played 40 minutes yesterday. That means he did not sit down at all during the game. A lot of miles on those tires for the young kid. And like you said, the defense was there enough. It seems like 19 points is a lot, but then when you see that he only played 40 minutes, that's not a lot of production per minute. So the defense did get their job done for the amount of time that Trae Young was on the floor. And Texas comes away with the 5-point lead, or the 5-point win. Listen, we talk about bracket busters. I think day one, people's brackets are going to just be blown up the way that this season's been shaping out. I don't even know how I'm going to make my picks.
It's difficult because you got teams like Oklahoma who could very well lose in that first round. If they go in as like a 3 seed, you have to look out for a 14 against Oklahoma. They're capable of beating anyone, and they're capable of losing to anybody in the country.
Well, you look at teams like Duke. If they keep losing, they're going to slide further down in the seedings. And if you put them at 4 or 5, that means they're going to have to play a much higher seed their first game, and they're losing to a lot of teams that they shouldn't be losing to. So look for them to also be upset.
Even teams like Kansas. Kansas plays like a vintage Duke team. They're one of the best 3-point shooting teams in the country, and they don't rebound. And we've seen how well it does for Duke tournament time year in and year out. They always kind of stumble in that second or third round when the threes stop falling. So if that happens to Kansas and they get it against some big physical team, they could be out early as well.
Now, Sean, there was one more depressing loss, and that was my Florida Gators. They got trounced by Alabama. I cannot figure this Florida team out. 1 minute, I'm thinking Coach White is a genius, and we need to extend his contract. And then the next game, I'm ready for him to be fired and kick him out, and let's bring back Billy D. But that wasn't the most embarrassing part of that game. Sadly, there was this video that cropped up on the internet, and of course, somehow I saw that a Knoll fan or a Knoll Twitter handle started this whole thing, and SI picked it up, and then Bleacher Report, and it just blew up to the Gator fans dance. I don't even know the song. Maybe it's because I'm too old for this kind of music. And it was just...
I'm not cool enough to know it either, so...
It was just terrible dancing. The song was bad. The dancing was worse. And it was just a big-time embarrassment for Gator Nation yesterday. I have no words.
Yeah, that was probably worse than them only managing 17 points in that second half. Alabama, we've talked about them early in the year when they played that game with only 3 players in the second half against Minnesota. Colin Sexton, their freshman guard, is a stud. He's going to be borderline top 5 NBA pick this year. And when you have that much talent, you can beat a lot of teams. And yeah, 17 points in the second half for Florida combined with that horrible video. That's a day to forget.
It's not as embarrassing as that time in 2014 when we went 4-8 and we had the 2 Florida players blocking each other. I don't know if you remember that when we lost
I remember that.
I think it was Georgia Southern or something like that. And I think the 2 players blocking each other were the worst top 10 for like 12 weeks. It was still February, and SportsCenter was still asking, is this the worst play compared to this play? And people would vote in the 2 guys blocking each other. It's not quite at that level, but it's pretty bad, Gator Nation. Let's do better. Let's stay away from doing anything like that ever again.
Yeah, that one was pretty brutal, but we had some ranked teams actually win this week in college basketball. I don't want to forget about that. The Big Ten represented. Number 3, Purdue escapes over Rutgers. And Michigan State barely survived Indiana, both those teams in the top 5. And Purdue, quietly, is off to the 3rd best start in Big Ten conference history. They're 12-0 in the conference. Do you know who the best start ever in Big Ten history is?
No, I do not.
That'd be the 2005 Illinois Fighting Illini.
Oh, no.
15-0 to start the season. They lost one conference game as to Ohio State. That was actually the only game they lost. They made it all the way to the championship that year, where they had to go up against North Carolina, Sean May, and the refs. And that was their second loss of the year in that national championship game. So Purdue quietly off to an incredible start. And I think Purdue and Michigan State are maybe two of the only teams in this season who can beat a Villanova, who is kind of head and shoulders right now above everybody else.
Yeah, 2005 was a great season for the Florida Gators because we had this freshman class lying in dormant, waiting to break out in 2006. So yeah, I'm very fond of 2005. Yeah, Purdue looking really strong at number 3. And not for anything with Michigan State. We talked a lot about what's going on there, but the basketball team has not allowed this to distract them. And we talked again about last week about how we don't want to see the players who aren't involved punished. I don't want to see any administrators or anybody benefit off of this, but I am glad to see that this roster of college basketball players who had absolutely nothing to do with this, mostly freshmen, are able to not let it distract them and continue on. I root for that roster of players to do well. Not anybody else that's associated with Michigan State, but I'm glad to see that the roster of college players, the college athletes, are able to do well and let this not distract them and not let them get them down and everything else like that. Big win for them, like you said, 63-60. And it was a team win. Only 3 players scored in double digits for Michigan State. Jaren Jackson and Matt McQuaid and Joshua Langford were the ones that scored 12, 10, and 10 apiece. So big team win for the Michigan State Illini. And that's kind of like what you like to see in college basketball. That's what you normally see in college basketball. You don't really see that in the NBA. You usually have like 1 or 2 superstars scoring, half of the points and then the team picking up the rest. So,
yeah, Michigan State does have those superstars. Miles Bridges had kind of a down game. He didn't take very many shots, which is kind of surprising, but he did his work on the boards, had 8 rebounds. That kid's he's a sophomore. They didn't know if he's going to come back or not because he was probably a top 10 pick last year. Absolute stud. I think he gives them the right balance of experience, even though he's just a sophomore, to go along with the talented freshmen they have.
And I want to do this. We don't talk enough about the small schools, and we pumped up UCF a lot during the football season, and I'm looking at this team, St. Mary's. They are 23-2, sitting at number 13. They beat the San Diego Toreros. Never heard of them, but they had a kid named Jock Landale. That's a great athlete name. If you name your kid Jock, he's going to be an athlete, I feel like. He scores 34 points, 18 rebounds. That is a monster game, even if it is just against San Diego. That would be a good one of those sneaky good picks that you can weave in and out of your bracket. Is the St. Mary's? Are they the Gales? I don't even know what
the Gales.
The Gales.
Yes. Yeah, they're finally starting to get a little bit of respect here because it always seemed for a long time that either them or Gonzaga was going to make the tournament, and it was pretty much Gonzaga. St. Mary's leading the West Coast Conference right now. They beat Gonzaga, so they're undefeated in conference play. Gonzaga's got that one loss. They're actually ahead of Gonzaga in the rankings for once. So it looks like the West Coast Conference will at least get those 2 in. Yeah, St. Mary's, I mean, all they do is win year in and year out. So I could see them making a run, and it's good to see them finally getting a little bit of this national attention. 13 might be like the highest they've been ranked in quite a long time.
Yeah, I'm just looking over their schedule. I mean, they've beaten BYU twice. No other big name wins. They lost to Washington State was their one loss. They beat California. And like you mentioned, they beat Gonzaga. They got Gonzaga coming up this week, or actually next Saturday, the 10th of February, 10 p.m. So that's what is it? West Conference? Is that what you said it's called?
West Coast Conference.
West Coast Conference after dark. Between the Gonzaga and St. Mary's.
They already beat Gonzaga on the road, so if they can finish this sweep at home, that'd be awesome for them. Big program win.
Well, you mentioned Gonzaga. They beat BYU yesterday, 68-40. Big game out of TJ Haws, 22 points for the BYU. Or sorry, that was for BYU. For Gonzaga, Jonathan Williams and Rua Hachimura scored 15 points for them. So good for those guys getting that big win. Yeah, that's about all that's going on. It's hard to get excited about college basketball when the Super Bowl is today. But hey, college basketball had a great day yesterday with all the upsets and everything. And we're now 2 weeks away from Big Ten conference tournament time. You said
they're going a week early this year because they're playing Madison Square Garden, which is traditionally the home of the Big East tournament. So the Big East has that schedule locked down. That's why the Big Ten was playing conference teams extremely early this year. So yeah, conference tournament time, always fun. My line, I've had a down year, but I'm hoping that they're on the right track now. They're getting better each game, so hopefully they make a little noise in the Big Ten tournament, get themselves in the NIT.
Hey, if you win the whole thing, you get straight to the tournament.
That you do, but with those daunting teams of Purdue and Michigan State sitting in that bracket, I don't know how I would feel about that.
And don't forget about Ohio State. That's still doing really well. All right, so let's move on to other things that are going on this week. We have college football signing day, February 7th coming up. And there's been a few movements in the ranking systems. I know you said that your ranking stayed the same. You guys are ranked, what, 77th?
No, 54th for
Illinois. 54th.
77th. You have that number in mind because that's our boy Herm Edwards down at Arizona State.
That's where I got 77. We're talking about Herm Edwards being 77 at Arizona State. This is going to be one of the largest train wrecks in college football coaching history.
I think it already is because, I assumed when he was going to Arizona State, his only job would be to recruit. And he's obviously not doing that. I mean, they have no 4 or 5 stars. They have 12 3-stars. That's it. I mean, if he's not recruiting at all, I don't know what he's there for. I mean, even teams like Arizona. Arizona's not a big breeding ground for football or anything. But the University of Arizona is 20 spots ahead of them.
You're right outside of L.A. I mean, Southern California is. I mean, it's a little bit of a hike, but it's not like they're in the middle of Wyoming or the middle of Montana. They're within a few driving distance, a little bit of a driving distance from Southern California, where there's a plethora of athletes down there.
Arizona State's also consistently in the top 5 party schools. So if you can't get kids to come to that school and have an awesome time.
Yeah, seriously.
Jeez, man, I don't know.
Party in the desert, man.
Yeah, nothing else to do.
A little Burning Man action there.
So how are your Gators doing with Coach Mullen?
So I don't follow recruiting religiously. I don't look at crystal.
I'm going to have to revoke your Southern card then.
Yeah, right. I don't follow crystal balls. I don't read Rivals or 247 Sports all the time, but I do monitor people who do follow it, and I kind of skim through their tweets and everything. And everybody who actually follows Florida recruiting is excited about signing day. They think it's going to be a big day. I couldn't mention any names other than this Jacob Copeland kid is the one kid that I see a lot of people really wanting. He's a 4-star athlete out of Pensacola, Florida, and he's got Alabama, Florida, and Tennessee hot on his trails. Florida State was in there at one point. I know he did a visit there a few weeks ago. We'll see where he falls. He's a kid that I follow on Twitter as well. He's a kid that's definitely living it up with this recruiting thing, and I don't blame him. I don't blame any athlete that gets this opportunity. He was at Florida yesterday. He sat with Coach Mullen. He sat with Emory Jones, our 4-star quarterback who signed back in December, watching the basketball game. I hope he left before the choreographed embarrassment because I wouldn't go to a school that's what the student body does, and I just hope that he's just avoided the internet since it's plastered everywhere. But no, where are we sitting right now? Florida, I think, yeah, Florida's at 18 right now. We were at, I think, 14 or 15 when signing day first rolled around the first time. So supposedly we got a big signing day coming our way, and we'll see if it pans out. Like I said, I don't pay attention to crystal balls. I don't know how you predict what a 17-year-old boy, let's call it what it is. I mean, these are 17-year-old boys. They're not men yet. Maybe they're young men, I guess. But, yeah, trying to predict what a 17-year-old kid's going to do, I don't know. I don't know how you make those calls.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'll be boycotting it while it's on ESPN. I can't watch this stuff where they pick the hats and all this, and they're all in their high school gym. You know, I know it's a cool moment for them, but it's just become such a TV production. It drives me nuts. I say I'm going to boycott all of them. I did watch Zion do his commitment to Duke, but it's such a production. Like, this is such a special moment for these guys. It should be made with friends and family. It doesn't need to be on national TV.
Yep. Another thing that I noticed about the rankings, and maybe this will change come the 7th, but right now I am revoking anyone's right to say that Lane Kiffin is a great recruiter and that other coaches in the state of Florida need to worry about him being at Florida Atlantic. I mean, I guess I can't revoke your right to say it, but you can no longer say it and think that you're a smart person and you know what you're talking about. Florida Atlantic currently sits at 98th place with 11 total commitments. Army, UAB, Marshall, San Jose State, Hawaii is ranked ahead of them. How do you get Hawaii, who's all the way out in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, recruit better than you when you're in South Florida? I don't know. So I love Lane Kiffin. He's a great guy. He's not a great guy, but he's a funny guy. He's an entertaining guy. And I don't wish him to fail or anything else like that, but I was always annoyed when people said, oh, Lane Kiffin's now in the state of Florida, Florida State, and Miami. You're going to have to watch out. I don't know what Florida has to watch out for a 98th ranked class with 11 total players on it. I don't get it.
I think you could have Bill Belichick coaching Florida Atlantic, and Florida State, Miami still wouldn't have to worry about losing recruits to them. It's not on the same level of the program.
If you're supposed to be this big time, it's not that he's a bad recruiter. I'm not saying he's a bad recruiter. Just stop saying people need to watch out for him being at Florida Atlantic, because as great of a recruiter he might be, he's not going to do anything at Florida Atlantic.
Yeah, he's probably doing good for Florida Atlantic. I imagine 98 is probably higher than what they were last year, but you're playing in two different leagues. You know, like I said, the Gators, Seminoles will never have to worry about losing a guy who's going to go to Florida Atlantic. If he's considering both and he's got offers from both, he's taking Florida. He's taking Florida State. He's taking Miami.
Yep. And so when I went down and I looked at Florida Atlantic, I saw that Florida Atlantic is sandwiched right in between Army and Navy. And what's crazy that stuck out to me about that is Army has 30 total commits and Navy has 33 total commits. And that is a sign of a teams that run the triple option wishbone offense, man. You got to rotate in those offensive linemen. You got to have a deep, deep set of offensive linemen when you're running those kinds of offenses, man.
Yeah, these teams, they also go 4 or 5 running backs deep, 2 or 3 fullbacks. They got a bunch of different quarterbacks who can all run the ball. So, yeah, a lot of bodies coming in the door there. I'm looking through the rankings. I'm trying to find, I think USF has 27, and most other people, the highest sees 22, 23 guys coming in. So, yeah, they're definitely getting bodies in the door at the service academies.
And the cool thing about these guys, I like to click on them and look at their names. I'm not going to go through and read them all, but these are all guys who are choosing to serve our country as well. So hats off to those guys. I'm just going to give a mid-show game ball right now to all 63 players who not only committed to a college, but they committed to their country for the next 8 years. I think they have to go through the 4-year academy and then 4 years of actual service when they get out. So game ball to all the 63 players who committed to Navy and Army. And hopefully they bring out more exciting snow Army versus Navy football games like we had this past year.
Yeah, that's a pretty good game ball. Going to make mine later look not so great. But yeah, can't forget the Air Force Academy as well. I don't see them on the top 100, but they're always in play for the Commander-in-Chief trophy.
Yeah. All right, we'll finish off just listing off the top 10 recruiting classes. Ohio State 1, Georgia 2, Texas 3, Penn State 4, Miami, Alabama, Oklahoma, Clemson, Notre Dame, and Auburn round up the top 10. No surprises really there with those schools. Texas always doing what they're doing. Do you see Texas with, gosh, now I can't think of his name. It's not Major Applewhite, is it? No, Major Applewhite's the guy that took over for him at Houston.
Tom Herman.
Tom Herman, there you go. Tom Herman coming in with a 3 class. But we see this from Texas all the time, no matter who the coach is.
I do think Tom Herman can turn this Texas team around. I don't know necessarily that it's going to be this year. Again, they have the number 3 recruiting class, which is something Texas always does. But this recruiting class focuses a lot on the defensive side of the ball. And I think if they put an emphasis on that, they can win a lot of games in the Big 12. That being said, these guys are all going to be freshmen this year in this number 3 recruiting class. So I think they may have a similar finish to what they did this year, where they're a little bit above 500 playing an all right bowl game. But I think 2-3 years down the road, I think Herman's got them on the right track. I like how he recruits. I like how he coaches. Their quarterback right now is going to be a sophomore coming into this season. I think Texas is a team to look out for in the not-too-distant future.
Yeah, and it'll bring some new excitement to the Big 12. It's just been Oklahoma, and then on and off year, you just have like a random TCU or Oklahoma State sometimes makes a run at it. But I miss the Red River rivalry has actually been exciting, but it just hasn't mattered towards anything. As far as like when Texas beats Oklahoma, it doesn't mean anything as far as national implications go because Texas hasn't been able to follow it up with a good season after that.
Yeah, it's we'll see. I like the Tom Herman P chart that he uses for the players. I think that's a great coaching tool. Make sure their piss is the right color.
You always got to be hydrated, man.
That's right. So
especially
he knows the
out in that
value
desert,
of,
and especially out in that
hydration.
Texas heat, man. All right, let's move on to our preseason AP Top 25 poll judgment, and we're finally in the top 10, or we're finally in the top 10. And I mentioned on the last episode, it's a lot easier to pick your top 10 than it is to pick your 11 through 20 type teams. So at number 10, we got Oklahoma State. Gundy seems to always get Oklahoma State to win 8 to 11 games, but can never seem to get them over that hump to win a Big 12 championship, to make a New Year's Six big-time bowl, or what we used to call the BCS bowl games. You never see them in those important type games at the end of the season. What was their record at the final?
So Oklahoma State finished 10-3. They were 6-3 in conference play. They lost a home game to TCU, which isn't a terrible loss. They lost a shootout in an awesome game to Oklahoma, and then they lost another home game to Kansas State, which is kind of what sealed their fate and what put them in the Camping World Bowl instead of one of those New Year's Six type bowls. But a pretty good year. Mason Rudolph, he put up the video game, the Big 12 type quarterback stats. They do have to replace him. They're getting a grad transfer from Hawaii, so he'll be immediately eligible. I think Drew Brown is his name. But yeah, they finished ranked 14th. So, I don't know. What are your thoughts on Oklahoma State? They had some entertaining games for sure, and they score a lot of points.
It's hard because when I hear the word top 10, you don't really think about what their record is, because 10-3 says, yes, this is a top 10 team and it's a good ranking for them. But when I mentally picture Oklahoma State, I don't picture them as a top 10 team. I don't picture them as that team that can beat anyone, anywhere. That's what I feel like a top 10 team is in my mind. Like, a definition of a top 10 team is you can put them up against any other of the top 25 and you feel like they have a chance of winning. I don't know that I can say that for Oklahoma State. I don't know that Oklahoma State could beat Auburn. I don't know that they could beat... I don't feel like they could beat Penn State or Wisconsin or Ohio State. So I don't know, but 10's not a bad place for them at the beginning of the season, and record-wise, 10-3. I mean, you look at number 10 is Auburn, and they finished 10-4. So I feel like it's a good hit. It's basically one of those you hit the ball right down by where the shortstop is, and the diving shortstop just misses it, and you get on base. Nice little solid single.
Yeah, so like I said, they finished 14th, similar record to a lot of teams in the top 10. So for hit or miss, I had to give this one.
I love it.
That one's a hit for me. They got it right. Not by a lot, like you said, but, I mean, to be 4 spots off, pretty good.
All right, number 9 was Wisconsin, and Wisconsin was a team after my own heart. We did a college, or not a college tailgaters, we did a Scout Team Sports top 5 preseason, our own top 5, and we had to stick with it. We had to explain it at the end of the season, and Wisconsin was my number 5 team. And the reason why I picked them to be a top 5, and it's something that people don't do when they're picking their top 5, is look at schedule. I looked at their schedule. Wisconsin's schedule was very, very easy and extremely manageable for them. And really the only team on their schedule before the Big Ten Championship was Michigan, that I wasn't sure in August if they could beat them. But I knew that they would be undefeated going into that final week game, or that final second to last game, whenever they played Michigan at the end of the season. And they went undefeated just like I expected them to. So I felt like the AP should have had that same insight, should have been able to make that. And I feel like they should have started them ranked at 5 or 6. So I think this is they hit it to the shortstop, and the shortstop dove and actually got it, and they couldn't beat out the throw. This is a miss for me.
All right, so they started the season ranked 9th. As you said, 13-1 on the year, undefeated in conference play. The only loss being that Big Ten championship in an awesome game against Ohio State, where not many people even gave them a chance. And it was a really competitive, great game. I was hard on Wisconsin all year long, and it always came back to Alex Hornibrook for me, and he showed up in the Big Ten championship, even in that loss. He played pretty well in that Orange Bowl where they beat Miami pretty handily. I feel like you're right. They did underrate them at the beginning of the year. Wisconsin spent a lot of the season as a top 5 team, but starting them out at 9 and having them finish ranked 7th, to me, I'm going to have to say...
You're loving this new sound effect, man, that you found on the computer.
That's another hit. They only missed by 2 on them. You can even argue 7 might have been too low for them to finish with just the one loss by 6 points, but I mean, from beginning to end, they're pretty dead on with Wisconsin. And I don't hate Wisconsin, for the listeners who think I do.
Yeah, you can't use... So the Basement Sports Report uses that sound effect as well. You can't use their sound effect and hate on their state as well. You got to give them some love. All right, so number 8 is Washington. And this was a team I think I put in my top 5. I can't remember because, again, I looked at their schedule, and it looked like it was a manageable schedule for them, but it wasn't. They couldn't beat the top teams in their schedule, and they finished the season again at 10-3, just like Oklahoma State, but they never felt like a top 10 team as the season progressed. They didn't feel like they could play anybody and beat anybody. Their losses were to... They came out struggling against Rutgers. They won 30-14. They lost 30-22 to Washington. They lost to Penn State. They gave a good run at Penn State, but Penn State felt like they were in control of that whole game. Number 8, I don't know. They finished the season at number 16. So this is kind of like I would call this a caught looking strikeout miss.
Yeah,
they left the bat on their shoulder. You felt like they could have made a big solid hit, but they just they took 3 strikes, and their final strike was they just didn't swing the ball or swing the bat.
Yeah, Washington came out of the gate just blowing teams out. I mean, they ran through their non-conference. They killed a terrible Oregon State team, beat a Cal team that wasn't very good. That Arizona State loss kills them, though. A 13-7 loss for a team like Washington who's putting up a ton of points. playing great defense. That one just derailed their whole season. And like I said, the loss to Penn State, not as close as the score indicates in the Fiesta Bowl. Starting 8, finishing 16, and a team that really never passed the eye test, like you said, despite Jake Browning having good numbers. For me, if you ask if it's a hit or miss, I'm going to have to say...
Oh, yeah, that's a miss.
Oh, that's a miss.
All right, Oklahoma, number 7, and they finished in the playoff. They lost a really close game to a really good Georgia team. Oklahoma is a hard team to judge because Bob Stoops steps down at in the middle of the summer. You got this young new coach. He's 34, 33, something like that, Lincoln Riley. You know the squad is good, but do you know if this new head coach is good? Do you know if the squad can overcome the fact that they lost a Hall of Fame college coach and now they've replaced him with this 33, 34-year-old kid, basically, in the coaching world? And I can't hate on the Oklahoma being ranked number 7. Especially when you looked at their schedule against Ohio State. I don't think anybody predicted them to beat Ohio State at Ohio State with Lincoln Riley as their coach, beating Urban Meyer in the shoe. So I know they missed it, but I don't know. I don't know what to liken this to, but I can't call it a miss, but I can't call it a hit either. What do you think?
Yeah, it was, I think you hit the nail on the head. It would have been really difficult to rank this team. So Oklahoma finished 3rd in the rankings. There would have been like public rage and outcry if they had been ranked 3rd to start the season with all those, with the new coach, with a true road game at Ohio State. You hear that, SEC? That's a true road game against a non-conference opponent. I mean, their loss during the regular season to Iowa State didn't really affect them much. Iowa State turned out to be a better team than people expected. But, yeah, so they start 7. They finish 3. A lot of the year they felt like a potential number 1 team, even. For me, hit or miss.
Oh, still giving it a miss, huh?
Miss. They went over on The Price is Right there.
They did.
So
You gotta go. Yeah. All right, number 6, Penn State, and this is the Auburn of this 5, man. This is that loud home run over the wall. When I think about Penn State at number 6, that is exactly how they played. You knew that they could beat teams. Their loss to Ohio State was a top 10 loss, man. You get a big lead, but you're playing a top team like Ohio State, and you can never sleep on those teams. Penn State, man, they played like a top 10 team. I feel like they could have beaten anybody in the playoff if given the chance. I feel like they could have beaten anybody below them if given the chance. So number 6 is a loud home run. This is one of those things where you can't miss and you got to hit it. This is Shane McMahon on top of a cage, knowing he's got to jump down and hit his mark. Who was he wrestling in that match?
That was Undertaker.
All right, so he knows he's got Undertaker lying on the announcer table, and he cannot miss this jump, and he nailed it. The AP Top 25 nailed it like Shane McMahon nailed this jump on top of Undertaker. That's the kind of hit that this was.
Shane did hit his mark on the jump, but he didn't miss the Undertaker. He got out of the way. There's no need for like a 55-year-old man to die taking a hit like that.
No, but he didn't miss the table that was supposed to break his fall. Because if he hit the floor, Shane McMahon would have been the one that was dead. The AP hit it like they hit the mark that was supposed to hit, just like Shane McMahon hit his mark.
Yeah, I'd agree. Penn State, to me, this was a season of what could have been for them. Because I said multiple times on this show that I think Penn State is possibly the best team in the Big Ten this year. That loss to Ohio State is right up there in game of the year for me with a couple of those UCF, the war on I-4, some of the most entertaining games of the year. And to have a road loss against Ohio State by 1 point, and then that fluky Michigan State loss. And Michigan State was a ranked team, but that had like that 3.5-4 hour weather delay, and you lose that game by 3. And all of a sudden, you're done. You can't be a playoff team anymore. They showed up well in the Fiesta Bowl we talked about with Washington. Started ranked 6th, finished 8th. They were probably better than 8th. So to me, if you ask if it's a hit or miss, I'm going to have to go back to our boys at PSR.
That's right.
Sure.
All right, overall, I'm going to give this 5 an A-. None of the teams, there was a couple of teams that finished. Uh-oh, you got a phone call.
Yeah, popular, I guess.
You always love it when your hotel room phone starts ringing.
Yeah.
I give it an A-. Oklahoma State and Washington both finished out of the top 10, but they posted records like top 10 teams are supposed to. If you go 10-3, you're in that top 10 realm, so I can't judge them for missing too bad on Oklahoma State and Washington. And then the ones that the other misses that they had, Wisconsin and Oklahoma, actually they missed by ranking them too low. They finished higher than where they started them, and I feel like finishing Penn State at number 8 is I feel like they missed the mark on the final rankings. Penn State being number 6 is a solid place. The way Clemson played against Alabama, I feel like Clemson would play that same way style of football against Penn State as well. I don't see them moving the ball that much against that defense and not being able to stop Saquon Barkley and the offense. So A- for this overall class, or this ranking of 5.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think, as you mentioned, the top 10 is a lot easier to rank than 25 to 20. So not a whole lot of surprises here in the 10 to 6 range, but I think overall they did pretty good with those.
All right, so you mentioned you had a game ball?
I do have a game ball, and it is going to Scott Frost. I don't know if you saw the story, but they just did their first workout in Nebraska, and they had 2 players hospitalized with rhabdo, which rhabdo is when your muscles get worked so hard that they die and you piss them out. So it's a pretty strenuous workout. And Scott Frost came out and said that this was a watered down workout of what they did at UCF. So at UCF, it was like a 40-minute weight workout, and they had Nebraska do a 32-minute version of it, and they had 2 players go to the hospital. So if you're a Big Ten fan like myself, I would be scared to death of Nebraska and Scott Frost and what he's going to do to these guys to get them ready to play this year.
Yeah, listen, Big Ten guys are soft compared to American Athletic guys down at UCF. That's why UCF is a co-national champion, because they were conditioned to take on anything. All right, my game ball, I mentioned him earlier. It's going to go to Mr. Jock Landell, the center from St. Mary's Gale. 34 points, 18 rebounds in 39 minutes is a monster game for this kid. 6'11", 255 pounds. He's a senior, man. That's the kind of guy you want eating up space under the floor. That game ball, man, goes to Jock Landell. We're going to give some small school love out there on this show today. All right, man, that's our show. Anything else you want to add?
That's good for me. Go Illini.
And even though we can't dance, go Gators. See ya.
Later.